It's alive. What are the actual main issues of flat Earth? Well, it's not the Earth. It's not the Earth. It's not the lies. It's not the proof. It's not none of those things. What is the real issue? The real issue is when you say something. It doesn't matter if it was flat Earth or anything, or even how we view things. It's our response, critique. It's our belief of how to deal with what those things mean. My deepest issue is not with those who are uneducated. It's with those who are educated. And those who are educated respond in a very similar fashion, no matter who they are. The aliens coming out of here. Neil deGrasse Tyson. He made certain remarks on a TV show and got on acting really sincere about, I like to use humor in my teaching. That's what I do. Blah 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 blah. I was like, I don't remember you actually teaching anything. You just dropped the mic. And then it's the critique of the flat earther. The common flat earther is no different than the glober. So completely swallowed up by your own belief. And people keep saying, well, just use your eyes. It's a matter of perception. It wasn't 20 or 30 years ago that everybody started waking up. It was a few short years ago that people started apparently waking up and believing in their snow globe, which is still a globe. Snow globe. You know, the dome thing. Nowadays, it's always, where's the proof? Where's the proof? So you can't disprove one model and use it to prove another. That's just complete insanity. You can't say, well, all this is wrong, and then use the same stuff that they used to prove that that was right, to prove that this is this other thing is not right. It's all based on Copernicus' ideas were and Pythagorean theorem, all of it's based on these things. Like it's a mathematical order that kind of makes sense. Well, what irritates me is the inefficient way in which people actually measure circles. It seems like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense, but it really kind of doesn't, because if you go off the set point from rising run to the tangent, and every increment of the tangent, if it's exponential and it increases, then it will curve into itself. That's where you get that Fibonacci code sequence of the circle that continuously goes in, because it's it's to say that if it continues to increase as it curves, then the increase of the curvature will collapse upon itself and continue to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And people put up and be like, oh, the shape of your hand, and because it does that thing. Like I had a guy come and say something to me about it. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And he said, well, that's the key. Like the key to what? And he couldn't answer that question. That's what I mean. Like about all these things, there's never really a fundamental ending answer to any of these things, and that's why you keep them going. Because apparently you can't get to the edge to say that it's flat, and you can't get out into space to say that it's there. So you can't get to these things, but you can make up all kinds of stuff. So if you have a minimal amount of fact in either situation that can support evidence through, some kind of way of measuring, in either way, using similar techniques, then somehow its validity can increase based off of that, but not based off of anything in reality and nothing definitive, because it's precise. It only comes to within a certain tolerance, a limit. And we all know that the limit of 1.799999999 is going to be 2. It's closer to a 2 than it is closer to a 1. So therefore, we say things like, well, it's 2. Even though it's not actually 2, it's still 2. And this is supposed to be meaningful. It's supposed to mean something, but it really doesn't. Because one apple can be this size, and the other apple can be like, 1.5% smaller than that apple. And then that apple's the 1, and this apple is the almost 1. So that's our measurements, right? And Pythagorean's theorem is like based off of right triangles. This doesn't look like a right triangle when you look at it like this, but you can just take it and set it like this, and oh look, it turns into a right triangle. It can turn into a right triangle. Pythagorean's theorem would be this here would be our hypotenuse, and we would go and say this size squared plus this side squared equals this side squared. And when you square those two and you put them together, you get a very large number. You take that large number and you square it. You find the square root. And if you find the square root to that number, it becomes substantially lower, and then therefore it's exactly what it is. And what does all that mean? So people are going to look at this and they're going to think, well, that's stupid. Earlier, I was saying that that there's no real way out of this, because society in itself is not something that you can change. It's an idea. You can add to it, but you can't take away from it. You can't take away from an idea because it is what it is. You can add on to it, and you can do things with it. So how do you really become free? How would you really become free? Well, you're going to be a slave to something no matter what it is. If you went out on your own and you started to live in the woods and you started living off land, then you'll be a slave to your hunger, a slave to your desire, a slave to your need for companionship, for something to do or whatever. And while you're here in society, there are guidelines and rules that everybody must follow, and it is what it is. So to say that something about Illuminati or the Masons or about the size and the shape of Earth, and to say that if we change these things in some way, that it would make things better, it would change things, it would fix things is completely untrue. It's not a fact. But those are fictions. Those are not even reality. What exactly would everybody be changing? And whatever your morality is now is not like the morality was, years and years and years ago. So even though we think things are changing, 100 years from now, they might think that we were completely and totally barbaric, evil creatures. And that's the truth. Because we look back and we think, oh man, that was barbaric. That was monstrous. Even 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago. 50 years ago, I'm 41. You go back 50 years and you see a lot of things with rights, women's rights in particular. And you'd say, any of those things, if anybody done any of those things in reality right now, you would be perceived as a very bad individual. So society has guidelines based upon the entire herd, not not the individual people therein. So what rules is put for like the entire herd is there to protect the entire herd because the herd can't think for itself. It needs to think as a group. People keep saying they're fighting a good fight. Well, what exactly is it that everybody thinks they're fighting? That's what I would like to know. Because there's no such thing as um, as money having equity. Money doesn't have equity. Money doesn't contain equity. It isn't. Money is a correspondence, meaning it is a way of measuring or keeping a an eye uh, on actual equity. Human beings are equity times equity. You live in this world. Somebody who talks to me about what's important starts talking about things that they think are important, whether it be an educator or a worker or just somebody regular, and they say, well, so and so made this many millions of dollars and blah blah blah. I was just like, my brain, I know what that means. It means comfort. It means all these things. It means not having to do certain things. But isn't it something that if you strip down every human being on the planet, no matter who they were, had them naked, and put them all in a room, they would all use the same toilet, and they would all use the toilet in the same way. They would all have very different bodies, but very similar at the same time. Everybody would be exactly alike. And there's really no difference. And the money is supposed to be making people special, but it's not true. It doesn't make people special. The money itself is special. When you see somebody with a lot of money and a lot of people go towards them because they want that special part. It's not that they want the person, right? Because all people in some way could be looked at as though they were in some way important or special. So when somebody says to me, NASA's doing all these things because of this and this and this, I'm like, that's really not true. If they know about the world in a certain way, then they also know, the elite also know that they don't need money. They don't need money. They don't need any kind of finance whatsoever. They don't need your finances because it's not really your finances. They don't need to be out here with any of this. They they would have to know something more. What would it be? Why is it people can't live without society? We can't find food. We can't farm. All those things are difficult. None of those things that we need to live and survive are naturally in the environment. We have to actually make them happen and build them, make them grow, make them be. So then what does the equity become? What is it really that's actually happening? Nothing that we would think really that important, because those millions and millions of dollars are just numbers, right? And if I broke it down and said that within a $100 bill is thousands and thousands of pennies, right? So the value of one penny, one cent, is in 100, and 1/100th of a cent means nothing to a human being. So 1/1,000,000th of anything is just a number. It's not really that important. So no matter how you put it, it doesn't really change things. If you really want to be free, then you have to be willing to sacrifice. And God isn't going to bring you there, because this is a godless world. People don't understand what even that means. They think that I'm saying something bad. They don't understand what I'm saying, because this world isn't built for lovey-dovey feelings and for happiness, and for people that really want a peaceful resolution to their existence. It's built to be difficult. It presses upon you its ability to be difficult. And you can either be like the blade that dulls or the one that sharpens against the grindstone of all the things that exist in your life. Or you can learn to live and accept the cage that you live in, and think that you know something about it, which none of us don't. I'm in there. I exist right there. And the amount that I'm aware of is very small, but it's big enough for me to know that money isn't real. Money isn't real. How we view it is real. Society is an idea. It isn't a tangible thing. We're very much afraid to be individuals, because exclusion from the group is like death. Because what happens when an animal strays from the herd? A predator gets them. This is the mentality and the way of the world. So what is the problem then? When people want to find out what's the shape of our planet and all this kind of nonsense, they're trying to figure it out for what? To change what exactly? What's going to be changed? Nothing is going to be changed except for the way that we talk about something. And that is not big enough. It's not good enough. Well, when I seen all these things happening first, I thought to myself that in some way, this could be important. It could be a very large deal. It could be very meaningful. And then it turned into this huge fight it was like the wrestling match. Ever since the Colosseum was considered and made into an idea, it has been a very, very lucrative idea. And everybody uses it in some sense, one against the other, pitting man against nature. Those are plot lines, by the way. That's how you tell stories, and that's how stories become interesting. You know, what's the overall tone of the story? What is the plot? Um, what's the conflict? Man against man, or woman against man, or woman against woman, or if you want to go gender way, us versus nature, us versus life, and it's completely and utterly meaningless. And people want to go and sit down and watch what's the latest and new video, with all this stuff in it that's really flashy, like Jeranism. Jeranism is always talking about NASA. I've seen a few groups over the years. The first very intelligent thing I had ever seen when it came to flat Earth was Dave. Years ago, when I first seen it, I think what's his name? That guy from the start. I can't remember his name. He had probably a couple hundred views, and he became what everybody thought is the foremost authority on flat Earth. It was actually an artist who painted the original, one of the original globes. It was a painting. The guy's a brilliant artist, and he was he did this. He was commissioned for this. So one of the original globes after the apparent Apollo globe was his version, and he did a really great job, and it was used for a really long time in a lot of different textbooks and other kinds of books, apparently. And he makes these videos of, like, everybody's so edgy and controversial and everything like that, and nobody's actually um, talking about what was the real issue. The real issue is how we were treating each other. And at first, it was like there was a lot of people, and you got people calling, one group globe heads and the other one flatheads, which I, at the same time, like, I don't really see why any of it would be so offensive. But I do understand the intent that makes it offensive. It's this childish behavior that, it has to be like this or it has to be like that, and it can't be any other way, and we know this, and, like, you can't know it. If you had disproven, if you say, well, the lunar lander never happened, and I can't believe it because of that fart can that gets them back off the moon and fast enough to come back here, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And all the astronauts being so bland about going to the moon. I would be excited if somebody brought me to Disneyland. Even at 41, I would, like, come back and be like, man, it was it. That was it, man. That was awesome. That was so cool. Like, come back there, like, yeah, well, there was some camera problems. There was another few issues, and yeah, the moon was quite something. It was really spectacular. I would be like, oh, I would need a couple of weeks to calm down to be able to even talk about the fact that I just went to a place where no other human being has been to ever, and I'm the first. I stuck my feet in the dirt there. So it's kind of messed up. Like, it messes me up. But in any case, it's not just that. It's a lot of other things. I had said, when anybody asks me why I think what I do about that is because Nixon in the 1960s told the world, he was the president of the United States in the face of the American people, that, we went to the moon. So obviously, all of the United States is now pretty much reliable for saying that we did something that we never really did. It makes them look really bad. It makes them look weak to the rest of the world. And the power struggle for that. And it's always been about land. It's always been about owning where we stand and being in charge. And it's so stupid. But people can't get away from it. I mean, I live in it myself. I have, these custody issues, and um, my ex-wife is, upset about time, spending time and stuff like that, and, like, how much I actually get, how much she actually gets, and, like, it becomes this war where there's no effort to actually get along or think about what's important about that situation. It's about, um, well, it's about being in control, being powerful. And a lot of people will say, well, listen, you got it, you hit it right on the head there. I was like, no, I never, because there's so much more involved. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And you got people chasing their own tails about the same topics over and over and over again. And I mean, it gets boring. It gets boring to sit there and watch somebody talk about how, how we can prove 100% and then show the same video I seen like 4 years ago. Okay, so I'm going to give one example. And I have a globe. I have a globe to do it. When people say that the Earth is a globe and they say, I know because of this, it kind of bugs me. And when people say it's flat and I know because of this, that also bugs me too. We should prove what we can prove, what we can see, and we can go on like the information that's within reality. Now, there's one piece of information where they say, well, we know that because the Earth turns this way, and on one side, the stars spin in one direction, on the other side, the stars spin in another direction. That makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. And it's the first time when I look at somebody saying something about that that I say in my mind, you are insane if you really believe that. Because here's the thing. If I live up here, let's try and find places close. Okay. So Africa. If I live in southern Africa and you live in northern Africa, and let's say that we're exactly same distance away from the equator, both of us, and the Earth is spinning. Right? It's a globe and it's spinning. Now you're going to see the stars going one direction, and I'm going to see the stars. If we're both standing in the same place, in a straight line from each other, looking in the same direction, both of our halves are going in that same direction. If we were both looking out here and the Earth was turning like that, we'd both see something coming in this direction. Not this side turns in this direction and this side turns in that direction. It makes absolutely no sense. And it's funny when somebody says that that's proof that the Earth is round, it actually doesn't prove that the Earth is round. It proves that the Earth is like this Rubik's Cube that's spinning on one half and the other half. It makes no sense whatsoever. Like, how could you say that that make any sense? That would make any kind of proof for a globe? That means the absolute opposite. That the stars are actually doing something very, very strange. Kind of like a whirlpool. Here's where one of my theories from way, way back, and in case nobody knows, I never made any visual videos. Never did. Never did. I wasn't very good with all that, editing and stuff like that. And I didn't really want to make movies. I just wanted to have a discussion with somebody that makes sense. Hello. Jackie Rumaro. Maru means to come in full circle. Same as like something powerful bending in on itself. Like Mugen Maru, infinitely turning in on itself. Beautiful. Makes sense for this particular bit of information. So anyway, I came up with my own theory of buoyancy based off of what somebody else was doing. This never ever caught on, and I thought that it was strange. Now imagine a little bubble of heat in the bottom of the ocean, and the pressure of all of the water and everything around it, and things that are living inside of that bubble, and that bubble is staying there. And there is a heat buildup. And there's like creatures within the world that in very, very dark places to create either heat or to make themselves make themselves visible and be able to see things become luminescent. I don't know. Nobody knows why that is. It's very strange. Nobody knows why that is. But in any case, let's say that what you know of as your portion of the universe was like in one of those bubbles. And I'm just saying theoretically, out of my mind. And instead of viewing the universe as, a group of these amazing stars in any certain way, that they're just, things floating around, and they're floating in two directions because they're swirling. Does that sort of thing. I don't know. I mean, that was just one theory, and I thought up a whole bunch of other things. I even thought of a good solar system model for Globers, because they kept trying to say stuff about gravity, and I'm like, your concept of gravity doesn't make any sense, because you keep saying that it's based off of mass and velocity, and the size of the Earth, but in an actual vacuum of space where weight has absolutely no real concept, and it doesn't matter the size of an object. In contrast to the actual space itself, then the size of the object is like the same as a speck of dust, and that little speck of dust in the mass quantity, or yeah, quantity open space, the vacuum of space, makes the weight of that object nothing. It's literally nothing. And the fact that there's no weight out there, then the actual mass of Earth is only in pertains to us in a physical sense, from us to the Earth. So what I came up with was that if Earth was actually a globe, that it's in a kind of water environment that's different. And around us, the only reason why there's the kind of water that's around us is because these little sun particles are that heat up the Earth, and the Earth is like absorbing all this heat because it's in this large material that, and it is conducting its own heat source. So a bubble forms around it, like those little spiders that get attaches air to itself and then goes underneath the water and builds like its little habitat or whatever. So Earth is like has its own habitat building around it, and the other portion would be that if the sun, like if there was a large sun in their globe model, that that if it's a nuclear fission and it radiates at the equator a harmonic resonance, then the harmonic resonance can actually, hold objects like acoustical levitation, hold objects in suspended animation. And you would need a conductor because sound doesn't work in a vacuum. So my theory wouldn't work in a vacuum. It would work in a kind of environment that's built in and is natural to liquid environments, which is all environments like are pretty much all liquid environments, in my opinion. So when you look around and you break away space, and when I say space, I mean what we're living in here right now. Like when you do that with a vacuum, you're doing something that's unnatural, and that's why it wants to fill that area. Because when you haul all the air out of a vacuum, you're basically like hauling the like water. Like if you took a bucket and stuck it down into a big old pool of water and then put a hole inside, it would instantly start to fill. If you created a vacuum and then you release the nozzle, it instantly wants to fill because all environments are based off of a kind of water, some kind of water in some form or some way or some manner. But I mean, this isn't about none of that. It's really about people and how we view freedom. We think that freedom is something we can create for society. Society is not about freedom. Society is about ownership, certification, and agreements that people have with each other. None of these things are bad things. They're just things that limit your ability to make choices. And some of those choices, good or bad, are a shared responsibility within the social understanding of what the contractual behavior is going to be. So if the contractual behavior is that you can't do specific things because then you get in trouble, and the trouble being that your freedom would be taken away from you, your rights would be taken away, and that would be part of the contract. So when when observing this in in your reality, um, you have to understand that even if you think that you can apply certain laws to exempt you from certain things, you still have to go by uh, uh, particular guidelines to follow what it is that society expects to keep other people from being harmed by your behavior or your wrongdoings or whatever it's going to be. So no matter what you do in society, whether it's we're going to change what the shape is. It's not going to change your position. You're still going to need money. You're still going to need. There's no freedoms. There's no pillars of freedoms. People say that like it actually means something. It's a horrible joke. Yeah, truth theory, money theory, flat Earth theory. reality theories, the theories of the afterlife, like theories. Things that are theoretical are things, actually, they shouldn't say theories, they should say hypothesis, based on, information gathered from what people think, and then you're building a hypothesis off of theoretical understanding of events. Theories are when you formulate a plan to try and understand what it is that you're going off of, and your hypothesis would be this is what we can do to figure that out. Nice, cool. And I mean, can anybody really believe in anything? Like you say, you did a video about truth. But what is truth really? I think a few people will actually reference the Matrix for this, but I'm going to reference another man. He's an older man, and he was doing something about the Mandela effect. And he was a very old guy, and he was very good with his Bible and about understanding. And yeah, truth is perception. Perception is they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and this is a very true thing. And what I perceive things to be is based loosely on what I think that they are. Because everything that I see, smell, and hear, when it comes to me, becomes a recording in my mind for myself, not the actual literal thing. And then I get a broken down version that is sensing very faint realities of what those things are, so that I'm not on, stimulated overload of what they truly are. So, like sound itself, if you think about not just the fact that when it hits your ear, that the vibration in the little bones in your ear is sending a message to your brain, and your brain is giving a recorded response. This is what a man's voice sounds like. And when you hear the man's voice, then you know that it's a man's voice, but the voice is not particularly familiar on a certain level. It's familiar to the sense that I know it's a man's voice, and I know that it's a voice, and it's a human voice, and therefore, your brain records all that information and comes in instantly. You know that's what that is. But then the more you become familiar, you know that this here is Wilson's voice. And I recognize Wilson's voice, and I've heard it so many times, and I put that alongside with the face. But it's funny, if you watch Family Guy and you listen to Peter Griffin talk, and then when you see Seth MacFarlane doing the voice, your brain has a bit of trouble at that moment with the voice and the person, because you would identify Peter Griffin's voice with Peter Griffin and the picture and the visual understanding and everything that becomes the package of what that is in your mind. So, what is the truth of perception? What is the truth of reality? That reality is something that we recorded in our mind that's not a real thing. It's a memory of a real thing. And the real thing itself might be actually frightening at times. Light only we only absorb enough light to actually, you know, understand that we can see things, the silhouettes of all things in reality, and what life is about. Yes, reality is our senses, and we can only know our perception of truth. All of these are very powerful words, and at the same time, very meaningless. I said a while back that, like, the reason why I described um, function for function, what those things are, is that it's very important that we all understand that what we know to be either can be a truth, and I'm saying that loosely, or they can be perceived as a truth, which could be a lie. You know, if somebody tells you that the Earth is a globe for so length of time, and you believe that it's a globe, then you perceive it as a globe, and then the curvature is something that you can actually see, even if there was none to begin with. And you look at the horizon line, you think to yourself, "No, I'm on a ball." But it's strange that you see a big flat line. And anybody who's ever done art for long enough in their life would draw a horizon line to create perspective. And this perception and understanding of depth, it becomes in effect a reality, an understanding that you know that there's there is a cognitive dissonance, that you don't see that what you're making is something that's one thing, but you're perceiving it as something that's altogether something else. It's not a ball, it's flat. It's not flat, it's a ball. It's a flat ball. But my brain is telling me that it's so big that I can't see the ball part, that I can't see the curve part. But that's not really the issue, and that's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, do you know anything that's happening is actually happening? Can you prove it? You really can't, because you can say to somebody, "Well, I can do this and this and this." You know, I can cause you pain and stuff like that. Like, between two of us, I can't know that I didn't want you to do those, even though somehow it bothers me, because we're very antagonistic creatures, and sometimes we can only believe something if it's really horrible, or if it's really wonderful, or if it causes some kind of sensory uh, uh, validation. So, and anyway, that's too, for me. That's too like off into the spirit realm of things. I like to keep things more down to earth. If we were to talk about Paleo Hebrew or Sumerian texts and say, this all this stuff comes from there, I would still say the same thing. I say where we live to now, what we live in now, is what we know. And if I took English and went back so many years, say I'll say two commandments from the Bible. Uh, in thousand-year-old English would be ne slepu, slepu, something like that. Nor slay thou. That's in two different languages. Well, two different English. One's 1,000 years, one's like 800, 900. Changes very little. Nor sinna su, nor sin thou. Thou. I'm not very good with these. It's like an older style Anglo-Saxon. God speak pus. Ium dijksten in God. God spoke thus. I am Lord thy God. So there we have several different examples of English. And think about it, that if it's so far removed, those things are so far removed, then our perception of what thank you very much. Um, but yeah, it's cool. See you later. Anyway, thank you for coming. You can share if you like. I'm only doing this because I figured some people out there might think like me. Um, when when you feel that feeling that you want to be free, um, that's probably a sensory overload, and you might just need to cut yourself off from all these different things. You might be getting too much information and overstimulating yourself. I mean, meditation is mostly about looking inwards at your physical and actual self. Sitting there and hearing your lungs in your own body fill with air. These are very down to earth and connections with your physical reality. And it takes you away from all of these imaginings and things that are not really in existence. So when you watch videos like this, you feel like a little bit anxiety, a little bit scared. Just let it all go. We don't need to own any of these things. You don't need to own these truths that are being called truths. You do not need to be the one to carry it ever. As a matter of fact, the best thing that you could do is just simply let it go. Simply let it go. And every time you see something, you could say, well, you know something? I think I became a little obsessed with that idea. And I think I need to just let it go and walk away and not have anything to do with that for a while. It's interesting, but it's not really that important that we view it as real. What is important is that, hey, you know something? I took the time to listen to you and understand what you're trying to say. And I'm validating you as a human being because you know what? Even though we might have differing ideas or we might have differing um, uh, thoughts, we're still in the same boat and we're still in this society. And I'm going to try my best to make you feel like, you do belong here. You do belong with me in a good way, and not in that way where I want you to suffer with me. I don't want you to suffer. I don't want anybody to suffer, and I'm a little bit sick of listening to people argue over, what shape the earth is, and I'm like, who cares? Really, you're here, and no matter what, it's not going to change a thing. It's not going to bring you freedom. It's not going to change your freedom in any way. If you really want things to be free, then you have to break off and do it on your own. You can't do it with society because society itself is a different idea and it doesn't subscribe to what you believe to be it, that it should be. And society is going to be in itself the whole and the sum of its parts. So unless you can get every single human being, black globe, all to come together and be like, okay, we accept that, and that's the truth. It's not going to happen. And even when you do, the rules are going to apply for that world the same as the rules are going to apply for this world in the same way. That power is not going to change. That struggle is not going to change. You are not going to have a system where there's no currency because there's still going to be trades and values. Those trades and values are going to be the sum of what people do in this world for each other in whatever way they do it. It would be nice if, like, we did turn away from that. And that was ultimately something that, in my mind, would be a really cool thing, a really cool dream, because this would be the only world that you have, and we would share it. And if we actually did share it and then say, we don't want people to be homeless, why don't we all get together and just, build a whole bunch of houses? What if rather than telling people about the abortion and birth control and stuff like that, you had to be educated your entire life. You get a home at a certain age, but you continue with education and you pick a career and you develop yourself in that career, and you need to be licensed to have a family, and you need to have good grades and keep all that stuff going for your license to be valid. And your license to have a family would be, consistent with how much you actually provide for your family. And whatever it is that you do in an educational process will be provided to you. And there's certain people that just want to be teachers. There's certain people that just want to be botanists and work with agriculture. And there's certain people that just want to do other things. If money was not, if being rich and more powerful than everyone else was not the focus and the goal, then as a human race, we would be bettering ourselves. But we base things on a monetary system of accumulation, and accumulation apparently has a magical thing on the end of it. I'll give you a great example, and everybody you can take this however you want. It doesn't matter to me. If you've ever watched Kung Fu Panda, there's a little green vial in that movie. And in order for you to be the one that reads what's in that green vial, you would have to master everything. You would have to strive a lifetime until you were, you know, It would take you 100 years. You'd have to live to be 100 years old. And like, where it's an admirable trait that would keep people going, keep people trying and striving for something and be strong. There's nothing in that vial. But in this sense, it's different. You're saying if you work your entire life and work like a dog, then you can save up enough money so that you can retire one day and go off and do whatever you want. By the time I'm 40, I don't like. There's things that at 20s that I would have been happy to do that I don't care about. I have no care in the world about it whatsoever. So if you're being educated at an early age and like really strongly educated and kept going back, so you would like instead of the curriculum being you do all these things and you move on and you never go back to that, you do it like in the same sense of when a person goes to sleep, they go through four stages of sleep. Person goes through life, they go through four stages of life. You need to learn this, and this. And then you get right back to the basics again. But then we expand on the basics and we keep doing that. And then you learn this, and this. And it keeps going and you keep expanding your entire life. Sooner or later, those basics, you're going to know them off by heart. Like going in to do a testing or anything like that wouldn't be necessary. You'd be like, oh, what are you doing this week? Well, I mean, I'm on my 20th birthday, so I'm this level of whatever, and we can stop looking at things in like this person's got a math brain and this person's got an English brain. It's like, well, even if that was the case, and you're more interested in this or this or this or this, what are you mostly interested in? Everybody still has to do these things that that have to be done. With this stuff at school, and you have your home. So you have your home, and you got no way to think about, what, those stresses aren't there to say, you really need to make this amount of money to make sure that you go and you buy this house. Now it's like, so how are you going to benefit society? What kind of things are you excited about doing? Well, I want to be a botanist and I want to grow plants and I want to have these like these large farms and I want to make sure that everybody has a way of being fed. Government was originally created because people had an inability of communicating from one settlement to the next. Government is almost like post office. Originally, it wasn't meant for anything much more than that. Like they didn't make up that many rules because we had a hierarchy of queens and kings and stuff like that. And some of these things we kind of forgotten about that, we kind of moved away from, some of these realities. And people believe that government is this thing, but the mythos, the mythology that had been created about government for modern day government is based on movies and people always saying it's all the fault of the government and stuff like that. Even here in Newfoundland, I'm in St. John's, Newfoundland, by the way, and Newfoundland is more than 500 years old. It's 500 plus years old. Canada is not as old as Newfoundland. The United States is not as old as Newfoundland. Yet Newfoundland had to sign on with Canada in 1949, apparently, to get us out of debt. And we're talking close to the Great Depression. When the stock market fell, and it was felt all around the world. Apparently, the correspondence was felt all around the world. No, nobody said like break it off at zero. Like consider this for a second. Break it off at zero. We can still print money. No, they didn't say that. So what happened in the stock market? When the stock market dropped, what literally actually happened? Nobody gives that any thought, and everybody forgets that was a real thing. I started looking at stuff about flat Earth and all that stuff a long time ago, and I thought it was exciting because I heard so much about it, even in my childhood. Every now and then, pictures and stuff, seen it in libraries and schools when I was a little boy. And I always thought that that was very interesting. I always wondered, if it was flat, would I fall off the edge, sort of thing. I was really small. Anyway, like the machine grows ever so much bigger. You start off with a building. Yeah, that the money. There's a few schemes like yeah, the friend of mine. Uh, they were trying to present that to me. I don't really care. A monetary system is a monetary system. It is to keep an eye on goods and services. There, if you write down, I owe you such and such amount of money, date it, and put numbers and stuff on it to keep track of it, because that's what a serial number on bills are, is to keep track of it. Then you're creating a promissory note. If I came over and cleaned your house, and you came over my place and did a service for me, and we were doing that for a while, and then one week you were sick, and I still did the service for you, and you never did the service for me, and you like said I owe you this many windows and this many, like, how do you really put the value there, right? So this is where the promissory notes come in. First, it was originally meant for gold trade. There were gold owners to keeping the sorry, gold blacksmiths who had these boxes, and they were like holding money for other goldsmiths, and writing them out receipts. The receipts became very important because I mean they had a banking system where like if people wanted to store their gold and they were going across overseas, then it would be very easy for them to like leave their money, their gold in one place, and they know that they have a voucher. They can go to the next bank, and those banks are connected, and they can see the signature. We know this is from our bank, and they pass in their note and get their gold in another place. So I mean, it was an ingenious way of like creating a market for holding on to those services, and they can get paid with a couple of pieces of gold for actually holding the gold for them. So basically, they were getting paid for holding on to their money. I'm like, I'll hold your money for you. And my buddy, like with his building way over on the other side of the water, if you don't want to, like, something could happen with the ship. I mean, you could end up swimming, but you can't swim with like a big old bunch of gold in your pocket, and you might lose some, or it might be too heavy and it might make you drown or whatever. I mean, this is actually from what would be commercial back then, which up all the gold, and they wanted to make their promissory notes themselves a valued bill, because no bank would actually take their own promissory note, because their promissory note to them didn't mean anything. They had the gold already. They don't need for you to bring a promissory note. You can use those promissory notes out there, but don't bring them here. We don't want to deal with those. And then later on, they changed that, and then the promissory notes themselves became a liquidatable asset. So um, no longer was gold necessary to be a liquidatable asset, and generative equity is being the correspondence for generative equity becomes like the dollar bills and hearts, and whatever value they want to put in, so that they can measure it. They can measure it, and it's like, oh, so you put it to the hour, like the way we measure speed, we measure kilometers per hour. We measure money in the same way. So we want to put like a correct value on time with monetary value, but it's not proper. None of it's proper. I mean, I worked in a scrapyard for 10 years, and all my time in the scrapyard, like, was a lot of work. It was really difficult. It was painstaking work. I got paid $14 an hour. If I were in any other place in Canada other than Newfoundland, I would have got paid a lot more than 14, $15 an hour, $16 an hour. I would have got paid in the 20s. And I wouldn't have got taxed so much as I am here in Newfoundland. Why is that? Why is the value of what I do less here than it is in the other places? Who keeps an eye on that? Who says that that's what that is? You know, you have people saying, but well, I mean, what can you do? They could say, well, I just don't have to hire you. Well, if you needed to hire me, then maybe I could say, well, I want, a lot more than 50. What if you hated McDonald's, but it was the only job you can get? And then you were getting paid like, $10 an hour over there. Your time on this earth, your life, because you ain't getting that time back. You're serving burgers to people. You are not going to get that time back. Uh, that's what you're worth. That's what your life is worth. So if you work full time at McDonald's for the rest of your life, that's what your life is worth. And you're worth like $25,000 per year. That's right there. That's about 14 dollars an hour, 13 $14 an hour on there. I don't know, approximately. But in any case, that's what that's your value a year per year, and then you're spending most of it on transportation to get into that job, food to eat while you go to that job. I mean, everything you're doing is just so that you can have something so that you can do the job in the first place to have the money to have the food. It's like a catch-22 circle. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's all bullshit. Stuff work. Plant, seed, grow, seed, eat food, swap extras, work the land. Oh yeah? And how are you going to pay your rent? And work the land. And then what happens if your crops fail you? And not everybody can do that. The solution is not simple. And anyway, it's not really my discussion here anyway. My discussion is the thing that I'm saying is there's no real way out of the system unless you're leaving the system entirely. You can't bring the system down because the system is the people, and there's a lot of people that depend upon it. Nobody thinks about the elderly. Nobody thinks about the sick. We all think that everybody can be like us and everything that can be okay. That people who have mental disorders and physical ailments and age creeping up on them, 90s, in their 90s and in their 80s or whatever, that, that we can just make this happen, that it's okay. That none of these things that we're doing are that simple or not that hard to change. They're all real simple, but it's not real simple. You can't just say, well, I'm just going to change the world and that's just it. You have to change every single human being's mind, get them all on board with you, put in a plan, start making that plan work, and make it work for everybody. There's no way to do it without making it work for everybody. It needs to work for everybody. So you need to create your own growing business of things that's free for people. This is all your time and your effort. I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm saying it's very, very, extremely difficult to help the world. And it's even more so if you want to be free, it's even more difficult. It's not really nice to say, Carlos, because some of those people that don't like it, they're simply old. And the system is an idea, and you're using the same idea to try and defeat it. That's all that is. There's no reward. There's nothing to gain from it. And to say that you're going to do this is to say that you're trying to freedom fight, but you're freedom fighting for. Because if you freedom fight, you have to do it for everybody, not just for a select few. And that's the same thing that you'd be fighting against. It literally actually is the same thing that you'd be fighting against. A small group trying to control the larger group. The government is a small group trying to control the larger group and have, its say that the way they want the world to be is the way the world will be. It's no different. I mean, that's what I've been saying. All these things is what I've been saying. The way people have been treating each other is monstrous. It's absolutely monstrous, based on an ideal that this 100th monkey, I have no idea what that reference is. To be honest with you, I don't really, none of that really bothers me anymore. Maybe shock value meant something for people back in the day. I don't really care. 100th monkey effect? Explain it. Society is not going to change the way it thinks. It will morph into one thing or another. It's been doing it the same way. I mean, you're looking at the same kind of screen. I mean, now our Coliseum is in little windows that we sit inside of our house. When you sit in the oldest empire on earth. Everybody says, I'm from the United States, I'm from Africa, I'm from there, but we all adhere to the empire's rules. The Holy Roman Empire, which grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. They used religion, they used everything, and it's now just a accepted way of talking. English is the most common and accepted language of the entire earth. The 80% will always just be sheep. Does it feel good to get some attention? I wonder. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm really not. But does it feel good to get some attention? I mean, that's what this is about, isn't it? If we didn't really care about, whatever, we wouldn't try and do this. I mean, I'm, in a little way, yeah. I'm the same thing. We're all the same thing. What's going to mess everybody up later? Is when you realize that there's absolutely no difference between you, me, everybody here. We're all the same. Exactly. Same blood. Not just us two, it's people, it's the animals. It's this, blatant disregard for everything. No, I never said that about craving attention. That would be a little bit too on the nose. I was actually being very, very, very slippery about it, saying it in a different way. I mean, truth is you're saying what you're saying right now, like your 100th monkey thing. All this other stuff is because you want it to be heard. You want somebody to hear it, otherwise you wouldn't say it. There's extremes to attention. There's maybe everybody will believe what somebody will say about the sheep of the earth or Mandela effect or Large Hadron Collider blowing the earth up. None of us with any real model to put it in. My teacher's telling me that stars are just lights that went out millions of years ago, and they're just catching up to us now. And then later on in my life, they're telling me that stars are actually suns all throughout the universe and have planets moving around them. And everybody always says things like, "Oh yeah, well it's just blah blah blah." Like it's funny when somebody does that because I'm like, who measured this? Who went there and checked that out? Somebody holds a lighter up in the air beside a candle from across a lake. You can't know what that is unless you know in the middle of the night. You can't know which one's which. You're not gonna know. It's just a light source. You're not gonna know what's around it. And if there's like little fleas and stuff jumping past the light, you know nobody's gonna know this. It's just this constant. I know this and I know that, and this is absolute and that's absolute. I mean, what I'm saying here is like 100%. It's just it's just my opinion. I really don't care if none of these things ever happen. Not much I can do. I'm not really worried about it. I'm not going to sit there and have all kinds of like thoughts. Yeah, I know that about water. It's also consistent with the ideas of point. You know something? I'm not gonna go there. I just don't care. Doesn't matter. It really matters. It's hard for it's hard for people to think. I thought that most of the people that I had seen were doing what they were doing because the issues themselves were important, but it wasn't really that. And I see later on that everybody wants attention to the videos. And Dave, from allegedly Dave, he's on my Facebook and tried to have a few conversations with him, but if I'm not talking about something stupid like artificial intelligence or, drinking my pee, then, I must be talking about nonsense. I suppose I am. Whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I just wanted to get it off my chest, I think, more than anything else. And maybe I can listen to some of the things that people say. I was kind of expecting maybe not as much. So it's actually a lot of info. It's pretty good. Okay. Maybe there would be a whole bunch of other things said and debated upon. Just keep in mind that I'm just having an opinion here. I don't know any of these things to be truth. And I'm not claiming that all these things are true. I have no idea. I just know same thing that everybody else know. What I've seen growing up, what I heard, you know, what adults used to say years and years ago. I remember when I was small too. Like, I got a pretty good memory for those things. I've heard a lot of messed up stuff when I was a kid. 35 years ago, I heard some weird things about the way the world is, and then stuff didn't match up very well. Like, so, like, how can you know what's what, right? Anyway,